Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we cut through the noise to give you the critical clarity you need.
Today we're taking a very focused look at East Africa.
That's right. We're synthesizing the key security, political, and economic shifts from late October to mid-November 2025. Our mission is pretty simple: to objectively distill what's really happening in this very complex region.
And we're going to move past the headlines, to really identify the perspectives of key decision makers and map out where things might be headed. The goal here is a balanced, fact-based brief.
Before we jump in, just a quick note that this deep dive is sponsored by ProWave AI.
And it's generated using Stylo News, the AI-powered news application that turns information overload into, well, actionable intelligence.
All right, let's start where the immediate risks are highest. That's the persistent security landscape, especially the counterinsurgency efforts.
The primary pattern we're really seeing is a renewed push for African solidarity and sustained military commitment.
And a key example of that is Uganda, right?
Exactly. Uganda just announced the deployment of a new battalion to Somalia. That's to support AUSM, the African Union Transition Mission. This kind of deployment is it's crucial right now.
Because the fight is actually getting results. There are some real strategic successes.
There are. Speaking of which, our sources highlight the reported killing of al-Shabaab co-founder Jafar Gurey.
A huge blow.
A huge blow in a precision airstrike that really hits their command structure.
And it's not an isolated event.
No, not at all. Somalia itself reported an incredible number 220 airstrikes since just February of 2025. That's against both al-Shabaab and ISIS elements.
And those strikes, they're targeted.
Very. We know they included taking out al-Shabaab's finance chief near Baidoa, so the focus is clear. Use intelligence to dismantle their leadership and, just as important, their money.
Okay, but here's the paradox. Despite these decapitation strikes, the threat is still incredibly lethal and active.
Yes.
We saw this with that lethal raid on a Kenyan security camp in Garissa County. What does that tell us about how al-Shabaab is structured?
It tells us they've perfected a decentralized model. I mean, killing a finance chief is valuable, absolutely, but it doesn't crash the whole network.
Because they're not relying on one central bank account.
Exactly. It's local taxation, illicit trade, it's spread out. This persistence demands heavy international cooperation, which, thankfully, we are starting to see.
Like the talks between Somalia and Qatar.
Right, on deepening security cooperation, and even discussions between Egypt and the African Union about potentially deploying Egyptian troops.
And regionally, Kenya is stepping up, upgrading facilities at Camp Simba, which is a key U.S. base.
It all bolsters that regional security architecture. But now we have to talk about the vulnerabilities, because this is where all these successes could, quickly unravel.
And what's fascinating here is the risk posed by the Makawi's Lay issue.
Yes. For anyone listening, the Makawi's Lay are local Somali militias. They are, for all intents and purposes, the frontline defense.
And sources say they've gone unpaid for 6 months.
6 months.
That's not just a budget line item. That is an existential threat on the ground.
It is. You can't expect loyalty or any kind of sustained operational capacity under those conditions. Unpaid fighters don't just become less effective, they risk becoming destabilizing factors themselves.
They could defect or just become local warlords.
Precisely. They could turn on you. This is a critical security hole.
And compounding all this is the resurgence of maritime risk. We saw that piracy attack on the Greek-owned tanker, the Hellas Aphrodite.
About 550 nautical miles off the coast. So that underscores the challenge of keeping those shipping lanes open, especially with all the tension in the Red Sea.
So if you look at the decision makers, Uganda, the AU, the U.S. military, what's the consensus course of action?
It's unified, sustained multinational military cooperation. AFRICOM is still focused on intelligence-driven precision strikes, but that entire strategy depends on solving this frontline sustainment crisis. It all comes back to paying those Makawi Slay fighters.
Okay, so that instability is directly fueling the next major flashpoint: geopolitics. Let's pivot to that, starting with the Somaliland recognition debate.
Yeah, this is big. There is a pivotal shift happening in Western policy circles. We're seeing U.S. and U.K. lawmakers openly talking about engagement models for Somaliland that are, well, similar to Taiwan's.
The Taiwan model. Okay, so what is the strategic calculus behind that push right now?
It's all about strategic access to the Red Sea corridor. The model lets Western powers engage with Somaliland economically, politically, maybe even militarily.
And get that crucial access.
Right, without formally violating the African Union's commitment to Mogadishu's territorial integrity. It's a way to facto recognize Somaliland's stability and location without sparking an internal African conflict.
And Somaliland isn't just waiting around. They recently asserted full control over their own airspace.
A direct challenge to Somalia's claims. And this is happening while Somalia's central government is dealing with its own issues, like a major e-visa data breach.
Now, if we connect this to broader regional tensions, it all feels very interconnected.
It is. Egypt's President el-Sisi and Kenya's President Ruto just met. They talked about Sudan's unity, but el-Sisi also used it as a chance to reinforce Egypt's position against Ethiopia's actions on the Nile.
Which puts Kenya right in the middle of two major regional powers.
And speaking of major power statements, you have Uganda's President Museveni. He issued a very public warning about potential future conflicts over ocean access for landlocked countries.
So he's directly challenging existing maritime norms.
He is, and that creates a lot of diplomatic friction, especially with Kenya, which is the main coastal state for trade. It really raises the stakes on infrastructure and trade across the whole region.
On a more positive note, we did see Kenya ratify an amendment to the East African Community Treaty.
Yes, to facilitate trade and dispute resolution. That's a good sign for institutional integration.
But even that has friction points. Somalia's full membership in the EAC is still facing hurdles, like mobility restrictions.
Security concerns are still outweighing the ambitions for free movement. It's a balancing act.
And internally, Somalia is facing what looks like a constitutional cliff edge. President Mohammed is allegedly looking for a 2-year term extension.
And if he proceeds with that,
the consequence is immediate federal breakdown. Opposition states like Puntland and Jubaland are threatening to form a parallel government.
Which would mean a full-blown constitutional crisis, pulling away resources and attention that are desperately needed for the counterterrorism fight.
The fifth gears now. Let's look at the economic ambitions versus the very harsh humanitarian realities. Kenya, in particular, is trying to position itself as a digital leader.
And that's backed by real investment. Kenya and Qatar just agreed to expand investment in agriculture, infrastructure, including these mega dams and finance.
And they hit that huge digital milestone with the 2 Africa submarine cable.
Right. The China-backed Eastern segment launching in Nairobi, a massive boost for connectivity.
But this is where it gets really interesting. This ambition is running straight into a massive infrastructure reality check.
Yes. President Ruto recently revealed this staggering energy constraint. Kenya's entire electricity capacity is only 2,300 megawatts.
Okay, that sounds like a lot, but what does it mean in context?
It means their grid is nowhere near big enough for their plans. They're targeting hyperscale data centers.
And those need a lot of power.
They need 1,000 megawatts each.
Wait, each? So you're saying just 2 of those data centers would basically consume Kenya's entire current power supply?
That's right. It would swallow it whole. So Ruto has said they have an urgent, non-negotiable need to expand to 10,000 megawatts. This isn't just a hurdle. It's a crisis for their future economy.
That one statistic just really crystallizes the scale of the challenge. On the other hand, they're also investing in soft power. Kenya Airways and Aga Khan University Hospital are trying to make Nairobi a medical travel hub.
Which is a great goal. But while Kenya is looking to the future, this optimism is in very sharp contrast with the humanitarian crisis unfolding in Somalia.
A crisis driven by climate shock. That massive drought from 2020 to 2023, plus the ongoing conflict.
And it's escalated to a global warning. The UN has warned of potential famine in 16 countries, Somalia included, because of conflict and critical funding shortfalls.
And the long-term risk here is just overwhelming.
It is. Climate models are projecting that up to 5% of Africa's population could be displaced by 2050 just because of climate impacts. So this shows that humanitarian aid and climate finance, they aren't charity. They are core security and stability mechanisms.
To bring all this together, let's synthesize the mood and the courses of action. We looked at social media sentiment to get a sense of the public perception.
And no surprise, sentiment on al-Shabaab is overwhelmingly negative, about 90%. Just fear and anger.
But what's maybe more revealing is the sentiment toward the African Union.
Yeah, the AU is facing a lot of criticism. It's predominantly negative, around 60%, and it's driven by this perception of inefficiency and bureaucracy.
People feel they're not addressing these deep-seated security issues effectively.
Exactly. Meanwhile, for East Africa and Kenya specifically, it's mixed. There's positive feeling about the economic development and the digital stuff, but highly critical when it comes to security incidents and governance problems.
So what does this all mean for the people making the decisions? The sources point to a strong multilateral consensus.
Right. Sustained security support is vital, but it has to be paired with a comprehensive strategy. Military, political, and development initiatives all have to work together.
And there's a strong push for regional organizations like the EAC and the AU to be the primary mediators for these political crises, like that Somalia mandate extension issue.
And the international partners, the UN, climate groups, they're stressing that none of this will work without an urgent increase in humanitarian aid and climate finance. You have to stabilize the vulnerable populations.
Finally, let's give you an actionable list. These are the developments you should be watching for over the coming weeks.
First, that constitutional crisis in Somalia. Does President Mohammed move forward with his term extension? And if he does, what do Puntland and Jubaland do?
Second, reconciliation efforts. Specifically, the outcome of those clan peace talks between the Guljasul and Digital Miraful communities. Local peace is the foundation for everything else.
Third, track Kenya's progress on the energy front. Can they actually expand their grid fast enough to support those data centers, or does that digital dream stall out?
And maybe the most immediate threat to security. The fate of the unpaid Makawasley fighters. Do they get paid, or do they become a new armed threat themselves?
That single vulnerability could shape the entire near future.
This deep dive was powered by Stylo News, and we just want to explain a bit more about the technology that makes this possible.
Stylo News is a mobile and computer app. It lets you download and customize your own personal intelligence-style briefs, tailored exactly to what you need to know.
The depth comes from its AI OSINT engine. It pulls from over 250 sources, traditional news, reports, social media like extant, over 20 languages.
And it uses advanced vector search and retrieval augmented generation, or RAG, to deliver these deep, actionable insights with source link citations, often in under 60 seconds.
That efficiency makes it an indispensable tool for staying on top of complex global issues.
So we encourage you to subscribe to Stylo News today. You can get access to AI-powered news on demand. Just visit us at www.stylonews.com to learn more.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We really hope this analysis has provided you with some genuine clarity on the dynamics shaping East Africa.
And we invite you to follow Stylo News on your favorite social media platforms. And please don't hesitate to request topics for future deep dives. We're always listening.
Until the next deep dive, remain informed.